In this video, we're going to take a look at Lingua's oral assignment. This allows you to create speaking assignments where your students respond to a prompt in an image, which will be automatically graded and analyzed with feedback provided to the student. Let's take a look at how it works. So let's enter in the topic or theme, and then the prompt for the oral, which is what the student will be responding to. So I'm going to put this in here. You can generate it with AI or just write your own. So this one is going to be describing a photograph and then discussing the significance of the topic and also giving a personal connection. So you also have the option here to upload an image. So for this is very common, especially in for IB classes, is having an image where you have to describe that image in addition to the prompt you're responding to itself. So you can upload an image that students will see when they're responding to the prompt. You can also add in the expected duration, which is how long you're expecting the students to speak for, as well as the max duration, which this is a hard cutoff where the student is not allowed to speak to record their recording any longer than this length, and also a time limit for how much time the student gets to respond to the to do this assignment. And then you can, as usual, you can add vocabulary and grammar. You can also add special grading instructions, such as like grade certain categories more strictly or leniently, or any other criteria you specifically want to be graded in the oral. And then you can also allow notes here. So a lot of orals, especially for IB, allow the student to have bullet pointed notes that they can write and they can refer to while speaking. So if you turn this on, the student will be able to write some notes as bullet points that they can um, look at while they're speaking to help formulate their thoughts and plan out what they're going to say. So I'm gonna um, enable 5 bullet points here, and then there's number of attempts where this is how many chances a student gets to record their oral while they're completing the assignment. So unlimited means they can re-record it as many times as they want. 3, 2, 1 means they can only attempt it that many times, which these are better for like quizzes and exams, whereas unlimited is better for practice and homework assignments. And then as usual, we have secure testing mode, which that's a lockdown browser, which is good for exams. Hide prompt before starting, which means they're not allowed to see the prompt they're responding to until they actually start the assignment. And then the cancel the speaking assistant, which we'll look at later. So let's start the assignment. So on this assignment here, the student sees the prompt and the image, and then they also have, if you've enabled notes, they can write bullet pointed notes about what to help them prepare what to say. So let me just write, for example, uh, so once the student is ready to record, they can start recording. En la foto hay personas que están tocando muchos instrumentos como un piano, los tambores y un violonchelo. Yo tocaba los instrumentos de música en banda en la escuela secundaria. So once the student is done recording, they can listen to their recording again. En la foto hay personas que, and then they can re-record if they need to. And then if you have enabled only limited number of attempts, they can only record that many times. So let's submit the recording. So here on the results page, we can see the recording as well as a transcript of what we said. And we can see a specific breakdown of how we scored on each individual category. For each category, you can see the feedback the student received, as well as a tip if they didn't score all points, and you can see a markup. So you can see here the grading marked filler words and also repeated words. So you can see a markup like this across each of these categories. So the student knows exactly where they're struggling and where they need to fix their mistakes. You can also view all errors and corrections, which just highlights all the mistakes the students made overall. And as usual, they can see the skill points earned, their strengths, and their areas of improvement. Over on the teacher's end, we can see the student's individual submission over here, as well as their score. And we can also see on the Performance Insights tabs the category analysis, so how students performed overall across each of the categories. So we see here how they did across these 4 categories, and then we can also generate overall insights, which these are holistic strengths and weaknesses across all students. I also wanted to mention that the autograder takes into account the student's phonetic pronunciation of words and phrases as well. For example, here we see in this student's grading that the autograder pointed out that the student's R and double L sounds are not consistently accurate, and also tip for improving pronouncing these sounds phonetically. So this is a good way for students to also understand how to speak authentically and pronounce words correctly in the language. And we also see here in this submission that the autograder picked up on stress. So it's also good for that as well. So let's briefly take a look at what happens when the number of attempts are limited. So we see here on this page that the student is notified that they have only limited attempts. So let's start the assignment. So over here, now when I record, I only have 2 attempts left. So I can record some stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then, so if the student just recorded for a few seconds, they have a little bit of a grace period. So if it's less than 5 seconds, it doesn't cost them an attempt in case they stumbled or made a mistake or realized that they still need to prepare more. So then they can re-record it without any issue. But if they talk for more than that, let's just wait a few seconds here. So now if they record more than that, now it costed them an attempt. And now if they want to re-record, there's a message saying, are they sure? And then they can re-record it and then record their submission again. Now let's take a look at how Quetzalita Speaking Assistant can be used. This is an assistant that helps the student understand the prompt, formulate and brainstorm ideas, and plan out what they're going to say. When Quetzalita is enabled, the students can access it by clicking on this button. First, Quetzalita will break down the core components of the prompt so the student understands how to structure their response and what the goals are. The student can also ask Quetzalita about describing the image. And Quetzalita will help them understand the image and the key vocabulary associated with it. Additionally, the student can ask Quetzalita for help in planning out their response. And Quetzalita will give them a structured guide on how to structure out their response and what key areas and concepts they should cover, and hold their hand while they're preparing this process. However, once the student starts recording, they will not have access to Quetzalita. So this is a good way for them to prepare what they're going to say before they actually start recording. So that wraps it up for this video. Thanks for watching.